They said waking up at 5 a.m. would change everything. More time, more control, more peace. At first, I thought it was just another trend, another thing people post about, but rarely stick to. Still, I wanted to know what it would actually feel like. The first few days were hard. My body felt heavy. My eyelids fought me every morning. I had to pull myself out of bed in the dark, questioning if this was worth it. But by the fourth or fifth morning, something shifted. It was quiet. The air felt cleaner. There was no rush, no phone buzzing, no expectation from the world yet. Just time, mine alone. And that did something to me. I started moving slower, more intentionally. I wasn't throwing on clothes 5 minutes before a meeting or skipping breakfast. I had the chance to stretch, drink water, breathe, and think. I stopped feeling behind all the time, and that calm followed me throughout the day. I worked better. I was less reactive. I wasn't perfect, but I felt grounded. People always talk about productivity, but no one tells you about the space waking up early gives your thoughts, about how different your mind feels when you aren't starting your day in a panic. I use that time to write down ideas, reflect on small things, and sometimes just sit in stillness. That stillness changed me more than any productivity hack ever has. It wasn't about squeezing more into my schedule. It was about being less controlled by it. I didn't expect that. I thought it'd be about time management. But it ended up being about mental clarity, emotional control, and self-respect. That was the real shift. Not in my clock, but in me. For most of my adult life, I was always running late. I'd hit snooze 3 times, then panic because I had 10 minutes to get ready and leave. Every morning started with stress. I skipped breakfast, forgot things, felt tired, and arrived at work already overwhelmed. That rhythm became normal until I noticed something. The people I admired most had one strange thing in common. They all started their day early. At first, it sounded impossible. Me, up at 5 a.m.? But something in me was curious. What if they were onto something? I didn't want to live in chaos anymore. I wanted space. I wanted to feel in control again. So I made the decision. No dramatic plan. No fancy routine. Just a commitment to wake up at 5 a.m. for 30 days. It wasn't pretty. That first morning, I hated it. My eyes burned and my body felt heavy. But I kept showing up. Day after day, I started noticing small things. The stillness, the peace, the sky slowly changing colors. I had time to sit with my thoughts, to stretch, to plan my day before anyone needed anything from me. It was quiet in a way that felt healing. That silence gave me perspective I didn't know I was missing. I realized how much noise I'd been carrying without noticing it. Those early hours weren't just about gaining time. They became about gaining clarity, about having a moment that was just mine before the day pulled me in every direction. It gave me a feeling I hadn't felt in years, control, not over the world, but over how I started each day. And for someone who constantly felt behind, that small shift meant everything. I wasn't chasing time anymore. I was finally moving with it. The first morning hit like a truck. I had barely slept, and when the alarm rang at 5 a.m., it felt like my body was glued to the bed. My eyes burned, my head ached, and all I wanted was 5 more minutes. But I forced myself up, stumbling through the quiet like a zombie. My hands were cold. My thoughts were slow. I stood in the kitchen, holding a cup of hot water, not even knowing what to do with myself. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't productive. It just felt wrong. And that feeling didn't go away the next day either. Waking up early sounds simple until you actually try to change years of habits overnight. My body fought back hard. I yawned constantly, couldn't focus on anything, and by noon I wanted to crash. The mood swings were real. I was irritated by the smallest things. Even talking to people felt exhausting. My brain felt like it was running on 20% battery. There were moments when I wanted to quit, to tell myself it wasn't for me. I kept thinking, what's the point if I'm this miserable? But somewhere in that fog, I realized something. This was withdrawal, not from sleep, but from comfort, from staying in the same rhythm just because it was familiar. I reminded myself that change always feels worse before it feels better. So I pushed through the third morning, even though I was tired, even though I wanted to stay in bed. That day was slightly easier than the first. Not much, but enough to notice, enough to keep going. I wasn't chasing motivation anymore. I was testing my own will. And those first 3 brutal days were the price I had to pay to even begin understanding what discipline actually felt like. It's hard to explain the kind of silence that exists at 5 in the morning. It's not just quiet, it's still. There's no phone ringing, no notifications pinging, no cars honking outside. Even the birds haven't started yet. The air feels untouched. For the first time in a long time, there was nothing pulling at me. No emails, no calls, no pressure to respond or react. It was just me, standing in my kitchen, holding a cup of tea, noticing the way the light slowly started to shift. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't behind. I wasn't expected anywhere. And that feeling, being present without urgency, felt rare. That silence started to become the best part of my day. I'd sit quietly for 10 minutes before I did anything. Sometimes I'd stretch. Sometimes I'd write. Sometimes I'd just stare out the window. I didn't need background music or podcasts. The silence was enough. And in that stillness, I started hearing things I had been ignoring. My thoughts were clearer. My worries made more sense. My ideas started forming again. I wasn't trying to be productive. I was just giving myself space. And that space allowed my mind to breathe. It was in those early hours I started understanding how noisy the rest of my day had become. Constant scrolling, notifications, voices, deadlines, all demanding attention. But in that silence, there was no demand, just peace. It wasn't just refreshing. It was necessary. I hadn't realized how loud the world was until it finally went quiet. That silence gave me more clarity than any app or planner ever had. I began to crave it. It wasn't about time anymore. It was about mental quiet. And that mental quiet became something I looked forward to, something that grounded me before life began shouting again. For most of my life, mornings felt like something I had to survive. I'd wake up already late, rushing through a messy routine that wasn't really a routine at all. It was just chaos. Grab my phone, scroll for a bit, maybe brush my teeth while checking emails, throw on clothes, and sprint into the day. It never felt intentional. It always felt reactive. But when I started waking up at 5 a.m., I had this strange gap of time where no one needed anything from me. No calls, no meetings, no responsibilities yet. That space was mine, and I didn't want to waste it. So I built a routine, slowly. Nothing too complicated. First, I drank water just to wake my body up. Then I'd stretch, not like a workout, just enough to shake off the stiffness. I started writing for 10 minutes every morning. Not for anyone else, just my own thoughts. Some days it was messy. Some days it was focused. But it felt good to start by checking in with myself instead of checking notifications. After that, I'd write down 3 things I needed to get done. Not a full to-do list, just 3 real priorities. It made the whole day less overwhelming. Finally, I spent 30 minutes reading something meaningful. Not the news, not social media. Just something that made me think, reflect, or learn. That hour became the best part of my day. It wasn't about productivity or being impressive. It was about starting on purpose. By 7 a.m., I already felt ahead. Not just ahead of my schedule, but ahead of the noise, the stress, the usual pressure. It made a difference I didn't expect. For once, I was choosing how my day began, instead of letting the day choose for me. It wasn't just about waking up early. It was about what happened in my head when I did. For years, I thought my brain was just wired to be foggy in the mornings. I'd wake up feeling behind, anxious, already buried under a to-do list. I assumed that was normal. But when I started waking up at 5 a.m., something started shifting after the first week. My mind felt clear, almost clean, not in a dramatic way, but in small ways that added up fast. I stopped forgetting simple things. I stopped overthinking every decision. I could actually sit and focus on one task without bouncing around from app to app or idea to idea. I didn't expect that. No one told me that the time you wake up can affect how your brain performs throughout the day. But now it makes sense. The brain needs rest. And more importantly, it needs space. When I woke up late, I went straight into reaction mode. My thoughts felt scrambled. I didn't have time to organize them. But those quiet morning hours gave me the space to process, to reset. No noise, no rush, just silence and a calm start. I began making better decisions: what to eat, what to focus on, what to skip. I noticed I could handle problems at work with more calm. I wasn't snapping at people or getting stuck in loops of indecision. My thinking felt sharper, more grounded. There's a reason so many CEOs and creatives wake up early. It's not just about hustle, it's about clarity. The kind that comes when your brain isn't being pulled in 10 directions the moment you open your eyes. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just functioning, I was thinking clearly. That changed everything. Around the 10th day, something unexpected started happening. My mind, which had felt dull and overstimulated for months, suddenly felt alive. Not in a loud or overwhelming way, but in a gentle, persistent whisper. Ideas started showing up again, small at first. I found myself thinking about things I hadn't considered in years. A business idea I once pushed aside. A short story I never finished. Even the urge to sketch something, which I hadn't done since college. It caught me off guard. I wasn't trying to be creative. I wasn't chasing inspiration. I was just sitting there, early in the morning, away from all distractions. No noise, no screens, no pressure to be impressive. And somehow, that empty space allowed something to return. It felt like hearing your own voice after months of static. I realized how much my creativity had been buried. Not because it disappeared, but because I never gave it room to breathe. Between notifications, emails, work stress, and mindless scrolling, there was no quiet left in my life. My mind was always reacting, never reflecting. But those early hours became a canvas. Sometimes I'd jot down thoughts without judgment. Other times I'd daydream without guilt. There was no deadline, no purpose, just curiosity. That's where the creativity started coming back. Not all at once, but slowly. I started seeing problems with new solutions. I became more patient, more playful. I looked at my work differently. Even conversations felt richer. It wasn't about being artistic or talented. It was about reconnecting with a part of me that used to imagine, wonder, and build things in my head. That part hadn't left. It had just been waiting for a moment of stillness. And waking up early without distraction gave it the invitation it needed to return. For years, I told myself I didn't have time. It became my go-to excuse. No time to read, no time to work out, no time to reflect. The days felt full, but not meaningful. I'd wake up late, rush through breakfast, jump into work, and by the evening, I was drained. The thought of doing anything extra felt impossible. But when I started waking up at 5 a.m., everything shifted. Suddenly, there were 2 extra hours waiting for me before the world even stirred. I didn't fill them with noise. I used them to move slowly with purpose. Some mornings I read. Other days I journaled or went for a walk. It wasn't about checking boxes. It was about finally doing things I used to say I didn't have time for. That extra time began to show me something uncomfortable. It wasn't time I was missing before, it was discipline. I had time. I was just giving away to things that didn't matter. Late night scrolling, random shows, pointless internet rabbit holes. All of it was eating up the energy I thought I didn't have. When you shift your schedule, you start seeing your habits more clearly. You see how easy it is to waste 20 minutes here, 40 minutes there, until the whole day feels consumed. Those morning hours didn't just give me more time. They made me more intentional with all my time. I stopped squeezing in life around work. I started building my day around what mattered to me. I still worked the same hours. Nothing changed on the outside, but internally, I stopped feeling behind. I stopped making excuses. I had proof that time was always there. I just never made room for it. Now that I had it, I didn't want to waste it again. Changing my wake-up time forced me to take sleep seriously for the first time in years. Before, I treated sleep like a leftover. Something I'd squeeze in after finishing emails, watching just one more episode, or scrolling endlessly through social media. Midnight bedtimes became normal. I convinced myself I could function on 5 hours, maybe 6 if I was lucky. But waking up at 5 a.m. with that kind of sleep, it wasn't just hard, it felt punishing. My body felt heavy. My thoughts were messy. I knew something had to shift. So, slowly I started adjusting. I began turning off screens an hour earlier. I swapped late night snacks for a glass of water. I put my phone in another room before bed, and I started winding down by 9:30. No dramatic changes, just small ones repeated. Within a week, I was asleep by 10 p.m. most nights, and the quality of my sleep surprised me. I wasn't just getting more of it, I was finally getting rest. I woke up without grogginess. My body didn't ache as much. My mind wasn't stuck in a fog. I didn't realize how badly I'd been sleeping until I finally started sleeping well. And more than that, I started to protect it. I stopped saying yes to things that would mess with my schedule. I chose sleep over scrolling, over late night distractions, over meaningless habits that weren't serving me. Not because I was following a rule, but because I could feel the difference. My mornings became easier. My energy stayed steady through the day. I didn't need 3 cups of coffee to feel awake. Prioritizing sleep wasn't about being disciplined. It was about choosing how I wanted to feel every day. And for the first time, I chose rest, not just sleep, and that choice changed everything else. Before I started waking up early, my days felt like a race I never trained for. From the moment I opened my eyes, it was stress. Emails waiting, deadlines hovering, unread messages piling up. I grabbed my phone the second I woke up and let the noise hit me before I'd even left bed. I didn't realize how much it was messing with my head. Every little thing felt urgent. I couldn't think clearly. I'd forget simple tasks, double book meetings, skip meals. And underneath it all was this constant, quiet pressure in my chest. I told myself it was normal, just part of being an adult. But it wasn't. It was anxiety. And it had crept in slowly, disguising itself as productivity, as ambition. When I started waking up at 5 a.m., I didn't expect anything to change mentally. I just thought I'd get more done. But that hour or two of stillness before the world began did something else. It gave me space to think without panic. I could make a plan without rushing through it. I wasn't immediately reacting to texts or checking news updates that made me feel worse. I was breathing slower, drinking my tea instead of gulping it, sitting in silence instead of starting with noise. And little by little, that tightness in my chest began to loosen. I wasn't snapping at people over small things. I wasn't as forgetful. I wasn't drained by 10 a.m. The anxiety didn't vanish. It never fully does, but it softened. It stopped ruling my mornings. I started walking into my day with calm instead of tension. That shift, even if quiet, changed how I felt about everything else. My work, my relationships, myself. It made space for peace I didn't even realize I'd been craving. I never thought of myself as someone with strong discipline. I'd always make big plans, early workouts, clean eating, focused work hours, but they rarely lasted. I'd fall off after a few days, telling myself I'd start again next Monday. I blamed motivation, but now I see it wasn't motivation I lacked. It was consistency. Waking up at 5 a.m. every day forced me to confront that. There were no shortcuts, no one else to blame. If I wanted to keep the promise I made to myself, I had to get up even when I was tired, even when I didn't feel like it. And that quiet, difficult decision each morning did something to me. It wasn't about the early hour, it was about the pattern. Every time I chose to get out of bed instead of hitting snooze, I built a little more trust in myself. And that trust started showing up in other parts of my life. I said no to late night scrolling because I didn't want to ruin my sleep. I made healthier food choices because I didn't want to wake up feeling sluggish. I planned my day better because I had the mental clarity to do it. Little by little, I stopped looking for excuses and started looking for ways to stay consistent. Discipline became less about willpower and more about rhythm. One choice fed the next. And that changed my relationship with time, with effort, with myself. I wasn't waiting for the perfect mood or moment. I was simply doing what I said I would do. That felt new and powerful. I used to think disciplined people were just different, stronger somehow, but they're not. They just built routines that protect their goals. And now, for the first time, I was building one too. I thought this challenge would only affect my mornings, that I'd just wake up a little earlier, maybe check off a few tasks, and feel a bit more productive. But it reached further than I expected. It shifted how I saw myself. I started realizing I wasn't stuck in old patterns. I was just used to them. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control, not of the world, not of every outcome, but of myself. That small decision to wake up at 5 a.m. every day became something bigger. It reminded me that I was capable of change, even when it felt uncomfortable. I used to think habits were for other people, people with more willpower, more structure, more discipline. But each morning I showed up for myself, that belief began to crack. I wasn't just reacting to my day anymore, I was designing it. There was a sense of pride in that. I felt more focused, more present, and surprisingly more patient. I had more space in my mind, which gave me more space for others too. Conversations felt richer. My goals felt clearer. And I didn't feel like I was always chasing something just out of reach. The biggest shift wasn't in my schedule, but in my identity. I stopped saying things like, I'm just not a morning person. That story didn't serve me anymore. What I saw instead was a version of myself I hadn't met before. Someone who didn't just wish for growth, but chose it. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, but consistently. And that version felt real. Not because I changed everything overnight, but because I did one hard thing every day and proved to myself that I could. That feeling stayed with me long after the mornings ended. One final question. What's one habit you know would change your life, but you keep putting it off? Drop it in the comments. No filters, no fluff. Let it out. And if you're ready to stop watching and start doing, hit that subscribe button. Because we're building a mindset here. Strong, disciplined, unshakable. Like this video. Share your thoughts, and let's grow together day by day.